So welcome back to Beyond the Surface. I know last episode was heavy. It was numbers, it was taxes, it was money talk, and I got great feedback, but I know it was pretty dry. This episode, complete opposite. So when you work offshore, you live on a boat, usually for weeks. 28 days straight, isolated, no alcohol, and then you hit port. That's what we call a run ashore. So you got divers and riggers and all the rest of us in port, got money in our pockets after 4 weeks at sea. You can imagine how that goes. Dive schools teach you decompression tables. They teach you how to use the equipment. They don't teach you how to handle going into port after a time at sea. So 50% of your career happens off the dive site. The runs ashore, the relationships, the reputation, and this stuff matters as much as your diving skills. Today I'm going to share two stories. One is from Trinidad, where I thought we might be killed, and one from Aberdeen that ultimately got me fired. Both taught me lessons that shaped my career. Are they entertaining? Yes, but they're also warnings. I was much younger. I thought I was untouchable. And the thing about this industry is it's pretty small. Everyone knows everyone. And one night can follow you for years. Now I'm the client rep and I have to deal with guys like I used to be. So listen up. So the boat had pulled up in the port of Spain in Trinidad, and we'd been offshore for 4 or 5 weeks. And me and Eddie, who was the deck foreman on the boat, decided because we were going home the next day, we'd have a run ashore. We ordered a taxi. Local taxi came and picked us up and took us to a bar. And we'd had a couple of beers in the bar. We were getting pretty jolly, having a pretty good time. And I looked over at the bar and there was a guy dressed as, well, I'd say is not a basketball player. He had like a basketball top on and a cap, a local Trinidadian. And I thought he looks exactly like Kanye West. Not new Kanye, the weird fashion stuff, old Kanye. And so I tell Eddie, look, that guy over there looks like Kanye. So Eddie gets up and walks over to the guy and says, my mate over there thinks you look like Kanye West. And this guy just looked at him and looked at me, and he did not look happy. But his mate, who sat next to him, burst out laughing. And then the other guy sort of grinned. And the ice was broken, so they started chatting. I came over and started chatting. And they were asking what we were doing in Trinidad. And we just said we were tourists. We were told on the boat not to tell anyone that you'd been working on a boat, especially not a dive boat. And so Eddie, for some reason, decides to tell him my name's Charlie. And he says, do you know, have you heard of Charlie Borman? He's a famous actor, and he was in the Long Way Down. And for those of you who don't know, The Long Way Down was a motorbike series where Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor went from, I think was it London, and then they drove down all the way down to through Africa. And did this amazing journey on 2 motorbikes. So he told them that he was Ewan McGregor and that I was Charlie Borman. I had quite long hair at the time, and I did look a little bit like Charlie Borman, I suppose. And they believed it. And so they sort of decided they were going to show us the real Trinidad. The funny thing is, all night they kept calling me Charlie, and I kept on not responding, forgetting that I was Charlie. And I don't know, maybe they just thought I was a bit of a rude celebrity. So they said to us, okay, we'll show you the real Trinidad, and we'll take you to the parts that tourists aren't going to see. And each one of them had a car, and they decided who was going in which car as they took us about. Maybe that should have been a bit of a red flag, but anyway, we were full of the drink, so we were going. The first stop was this bar full of gorgeous women. And I mean, really beautiful hair, lots of makeup, maybe a bit too much makeup, very friendly. But something felt a bit off. And we'd ordered a drink, and we're having a drink in there. And I sort of looked around a bit more carefully. And I realized they'd taken us to a trans bar. And we were completely out of our depth. I looked around, I noticed the Adam's apples. And so we just went with it, had a few more drinks, and it was absolutely fine. Everyone was really friendly, no problem at all. We get back in the cars, drive to the next place, have a few more drinks, and we were pretty much just pottering around the Port of Spain, going around different bars, different areas that they want to show us. I remember there was a funny stop where one of them needed to stop for fuel, so we stopped at this gas station. There was a guy lying on the ground unconscious over the other side, and there was this other guy with spray paint, and he's literally spray painting in white. He was painting his clothes and everything. And then I remember going into the garage and then coming out again, and as I come back, he's spray painting the wheels of one of the car. And so we shout, well, what are you doing? And the Trinidadians like go for him, and he just runs off into the night. So we've got white wheels now on one of the cars. And there's a guy left there on the ground, painted white. And I'm thinking, what the fuck have we got into? Where are we? What is this place? So a bit later on that night, they took us we ended up in a street market. It's, I don't know, 3, 4 a.m. It's a very rough area. We're surrounded by locals. And everyone's been drinking. And there's more going on than that. I think other people are on certain substances because there is a lot of strange behaviour. And Eddie and I look at each other and we think, we've survived so far. It's getting pretty hectic. And we don't know where we are. We can't get out on our own at that moment. So we have a bit of discussion and we make a plan. Say, look, it's late and we need to get back to the hotel. So we decide to tell our hosts, say, look, we're going to get a taxi home now. And both of these guys just looked really serious. And they said, you're not going anywhere in a taxi. We won't allow it. It's not going to happen. And I thought, this is it. This is where we get robbed. They have lulled us into a false sense of security here. They've taken us to a place we have no idea where we are. And this is literally where we get robbed and killed. But surrounded by all these guys, it just seemed like there was nothing we could do. I mean, where do you run to when you don't know where you are? And so I think, well, if we get in the cars, they're going to drive us away from these guys. So that's one thing. There'll be less people here, there'll be less danger, and maybe we can stop, drop, and roll. Sweaty and I looked at each other, said our goodbyes, and we really thought it was like the type of goodbyes where you might not see each other again, and get into the separate cars and sort of accept that fate as we get into the cars. I'm looking for an area where I'm going to stop, drop, and roll, but the guy's driving so fast, that area didn't come, and I'm like, do I grab the wheel? Do I pull him off the road? And we leave that area we were in, and we drive to a bit of a nicer area, and then a road I recognised from coming away at the beginning of the evening. And they drive us straight back to the hotel, which was surprising, having thought what was going to happen didn't happen. And we both get out of the cars. Eddie and I look at each other sort of quizzically and with relief. And the guys say, okay, can we get your email addresses, get your phone numbers, contact, because if you ever come back, it'll be great to take you out again. Thanks for the entertainment tonight. If you ever come back, look us up. So we gave them the numbers, and they were just good guys. They just wanted to show us their city. you know. Eddie actually went back to Trinidad and he met up with him again and he had another great night out. So I think we were incredibly naive. It could have ended very differently, and we got lucky. They say don't trust strangers in foreign ports, and there's a reason for that. But sometimes the world surprises you. Sometimes I still don't know which lesson to take, but it's always in the back of my mind. Another run ashore, a different job. Picture the scene. We're back in Aberdeen, been out at sea for 2 weeks. We come back inshore, and we go out drinking. I'd been out for most of the day drinking with my mate Ali, and we'd gone up some side street in Aberdeen, some random bar, and there were like 10 divers in there, all getting pissed, and a load of Irish fellas who were working on the site next door. And we were having such a good time in there mid-afternoon that these guys decided to join us, not drink us, or try and drink us under the table, I suppose. And they had a few drinks and they went back to work, and then they were back not too long after saying they'd all been fired from their job, so we carried on drinking with them. Anyway, had a great time. So I came back to the boat. I was pretty pissed. And when I got back to the boat, my mate Gilly had just come off shift. And he wanted to go out, but no one was going to go out. There was no one that wanted to go out. So because I was in the state I was in, I was like, well, I'll go back again. And so we snuck off the boat. You're supposed to sign in and sign out with security, but we've been told not to go out. So we snuck off without signing out, which is obviously not a good thing, and I wouldn't advise anyone to do it. And I got even more drunk. Gilly got really drunk, and no incident happened. It was, quite benign. And we got back on the boat without signing in. And I said, Gilly, go to bed. He went to his cabin. I went to my cabin. Happy days. Anyway, in the morning, I get a phone call on my cabin phone. And it's Gilly. And he's like, mate, come to my cabin. Please come to my cabin. And I'm just like, mate, no, I'm baggage. I'm hungover. I'm not coming out. So I ignore it. Put the phone back down. Phone rings again. Ignore. Pick up, put down. Phone rings third time. Frantic. Please come to my cabin. I'm like, fine, I'll go and see what he wants. So I open the cabin door and I'm greeted with the sight from, it looks like the set of a horror movie. There's blood all over the place. There's blood on the walls. There's blood on the floor. There's blood on the bed. There's blood on the bed underneath. Gilly was on the top bunk. And Gilly sat there in a towel wrapped around his waist, confused, saying, Stu, what happened last night? Please tell me what happened last night. So I just tell him, well, we got back last night. I sent you to your cabin. I went to my cabin. I went to sleep, and now you phone me up. What the hell happened? And he says, oh, that's what I'm asking you. And he moves his towel. The towel's across his knees. He moves his towel, and there is a massive gash in his knee. I mean, it's completely split open, and you can see inside it. It was minging. And he looks at me. He's like, Stu, you're a diver medic, aren't you? Can you stitch this up so I can keep diving? And I looked at him and I was like, dude, a surgeon's going to have difficulty stitching that up properly. I said, I can't stitch that up. So he's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, there's not much we can do, mate. I said, I'll go and get Skipsy. Skipsy was one of the supervisors on the job and also a mate of ours. And so I go and find Skipsy and I'm like, can I have a word? And he's like, yeah, of course you can, mate. What's happened? And then he looks at my face and says, whatever you're about to tell me, don't bullshit me. So I tell him everything. And he's like, where is he? And I'm like, he's still in his cabin. Come and have a look. And Skipsy walks into the cabin and goes, Jesus Christ, what the fuck happened here? So looking at it, I think what had actually happened was Gilly had the top bunk, and he'd obviously managed to get himself into bed on the top bunk. He'd needed to have a pee after he'd got into bed, and so he tried to climb out of bed. And what happened is that we got these shelves, and on the shelves are these little bars that go across the shelves, and they held in these little retaining brackets. And the bars go across the shelves so that if you've got anything on the shelf, obviously you're on a boat. If the boat's moving around, you don't want stuff falling off the shelves. So these little retaining strips stop everything falling off your shelves. But the retaining bar had been taken out for some reason, and so it just had these small aluminium brackets that were like a U channel on the sides. And so I think what had happened was as he was trying to get out of bed, he didn't use the ladder. He just tried to jump out, and he'd slipped and he'd caught his knee on the shelf bracket, and it had opened up his knee quite badly. But he was so drunk he didn't notice. As he got down, there was blood everywhere. He went to the bathroom, did his business, came back out, climbed back into bed, obviously blood going everywhere. When he woke up in the morning, he looked around, seen all this blood, and went to full panic mode. So Skipsy went, look, I'm going to have to tell the OCM. OCM on a dive boat's the big boss. And so we went to see the OCM, who's this lovely Welsh chap who seems very stern, but actually he's got an absolute heart of gold. And he covered for us. Gilly got sent home. Well, actually, sorry, he got sent to the hospital for medical treatment and sent home after. And I got the naughty corner treatment. They gathered all the divers together. And they said, on the next crew change, in 2 weeks, there's no drinking. Especially, no one goes anywhere with stew. At that point in my diving career, I had a bit of a reputation. Not undeserved, I suppose, looking back on it. I'm not trying to condone my behaviour and my drinking habit when I was a younger diver. I'm just putting that out there. So I'm not trying to give myself accolades for being a pisshead, just so you know. Anyway, 2 weeks later, we're back in port. Me and Big Paddy obviously go out drinking. We just thought we'll just have a few pints, we'll not get too pissed, but we did. And on the way back to the boat, which is berthed at Clipper Quay in Aberdeen, we decided to go for a last beer in the Fitty bar, which is the bar that's closest to the port, closest to our quayside. What we didn't see was the client rep sitting in the corner. So we order our 2 pints, we start drinking our pints. The client rep comes over and he says, put down your pints, go back to the boat. He comes over and he says, put down your pints, go back to the boat quietly, do not pass go, do not collect £200. So he could have fired us on the spot, run us off the job. When you get fired from being on a job offshore, it's called being run off the job. So he could have run us off the job. He gave us a warning instead, even after the previous behaviour of 2 weeks before. I go to bed, back to my cabin. I think I've done well because I'm in my cabin. However, Paddy doesn't go back to his cabin. He goes to the galley, which is a big no-no when you come in pissed, and gets himself a load of food, goes to the smoko, and he falls asleep. When he's found, he's got half a loaf of bread on his chest, and there are crumbs everywhere, and he's got a lit cigarette in his hand. It's burning down. He's got a big trail of ash, had a big trail of ash on it, apparently. Unfortunately for him and me, he was found by the same client rep who'd warned us in the Fitty bar. So in the morning, there's a knock on the door, and it's the OCM. And he opens the door, and I'm lying there in bed, looking bleary-eyed. And in his gentle Welsh lilt, apologises to me, funnily enough, and says, I'm sorry, Stu, but you've been run off the job. So I look at him and say, well, yeah, it's a fair cop, fair one, I'll pack my bags. So I leave the boat, and it's about a 20-minute walk from the boat to the train station. And by the time I got to the train station, I'd had 2 phone calls from agencies saying, look, we know you're available and we're looking for somebody for this next job. And my brother had actually phoned me a couple of days before and he's like, look, I'm going down to Devon to go surfing. Do you want to come surfing with me? And so I told these agencies, oh, sorry, I'm busy, I'm not available, and went surfing with my brother instead. So, oh, to be young with no responsibilities. So the lesson I took from this, or the lesson I have taken from this in retrospect, is the industry is small and everyone knows everyone. One night out can follow you for years. I got pretty lucky. I got on other jobs and nothing was held against me. Some guys don't get second chances. Now, I'm the client rep. Dealing with guys like I used to be, it's not as bad as when I was a young diver because there's a slightly different culture now. But like I said before, I've made those mistakes and I've learned from them. So that's Runs Ashore. The good, the bad, and the how did we survive that. So I've made those mistakes and I've learned from them. And you will too. Just try to learn before you get fired rather than after. The bigger point I'm trying to make is your reputation in this industry is everything. And one night can follow you for 10 years. The diving world is tiny. Everyone knows everyone. So be smart out there. So the next episode is going to be something different again, and we're talking about fitting in offshore. Let's just say my accent has caused some interesting moments, including a nickname that I didn't know I had for about 2 years. Thanks once again for listening. If you're getting value from this podcast, please share it with someone else who needs to hear it. And if you're just starting out in the industry or want to start out in the industry and want to go in a bit deeper, you can join our community. The link will be in the bio. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers. If you're serious about an offshore career and want the truth, everything you actually need is at beyondthesurfaceoffshore.com.